next speaker, Erik Berg, curator from Sweden, worked for several institutions. At the moment, he's mainly concerned with Poste Restante performance project.
Good evening. As Søren already said, my name is Erik Berg. I'm from Stockholm, Sweden. And since I do not represent an institution or a space or a nice artist-run initiative gallery thing, I would like to speak a bit about my practice. And I'm actually going to start from the very beginning with the first work that I've curated. I was not aware of the fact that I curated my first work. This was in 1988. I was 4 years old at the time. And well, as you see, the artist, the name Liselott Berg, that's my mother. So the story was this, that I was subscribing to a comic book, as kids do, and all of a sudden they sent us an episode called Bamse i Trollskogen, which is a story about, well, to make a long story short, there's an evil witch in this comic book, and she took away the children from Bamse. We were reading and reading, of course, and when we got to the end, there was no end. There was just this to be continued. And I absolutely lost it. I couldn't stop crying. And I couldn't stop wondering whatever happened to these kids. And it went so far that I actually forced my dear mom to actually draw herself the last page of the story, because I couldn't wait 1 month to see it. And that was sort of my the first work I've done, and I've continued with this practice ever since. Right, flipping. Yeah, I've made this. This is notes for me, but you can also read it if you'd like. I'm Erik Berg. I'm a curator. I'm also a director, in the sense that I direct theater and film. As a curator, I work with site and situation-specific art projects. I try as much as I can to make that in very close collaboration with the artists that I choose to work with, and I create new work, and yeah, well, you know, and the rest is just. I will try to show you some examples from this. As a director, I'm working in an artistic collaboration called Poste Restante with 2 other artists called Linn-Hilda Lamberg and Stefan Åkesson, who's a set designer and a dramaturg. And with Poste Restante, I'm directing, set designing, and producing. And I will talk a bit more about Poste Restante in a bit. And that was 4 minutes. Moving on. This is Gelatin on Boring Island was a project that was born in 2006, where me and a colleague of mine in Stockholm invited Austrian artist group Gelatin to make a new site-specific work for Stockholm. The only framework that we gave them to work with was Stockholm. They could do whatever they wanted to, but we asked them to have in mind that we did not have any kind of space, and we did not have any resources fixed. So we had no money, we had no space, and we really wanted to show their work. And we invited them over for a study visit to Stockholm, and they fell in love with the Stockholm archipelago, such as so many people have done before them. It might have to do with the fact that they're from Austria, and there's no water surrounding Austria whatsoever. And we have this beautiful archipelago with compiled of very many different whatever. So they decided to make a project called Gelatin on Boring Island. What they wanted to do is that they wanted to investigate boredom, and in the sense that we are living in times where we sort of fear boredom a lot, where we use a lot of different kind of tools to escape our well, to move into this very whatever. What they did is we left them on a bare rock island, a 250 square meter bare rock flat island without any trees on it for a month, and it's in a very crowded part of the archipelago, which is where the boats for Estonia and Finland pass. So they were also the curious sites to about 120,000 visitors that used the archipelago more regularly as their project, and there was investigating boredom dressed as brides for 1 month. I myself spent 1 week with them. That was well enough. I can't imagine spending almost 1 month, but it turned out a very beautiful project, which is now about to become a children's book, which is to be published next year. So, if Gelatin on Boredom Island was a project initiated by and with artists, I would like to show you an example of what would happen if you as an institutional body or a space would invite me to make a project. It might look a bit like this. This is a sculpture by a Swedish artist born in Finland called Matti Kallioinen. The title of the sculpture is Phylogenes, and it refers to a very specific process in nature, which is the individual evolution of one individual within a species, how much they evolve during one lifetime. And the sculpture is made of about a couple of hundred meters of black nylon fabric. It is hung on the wall in this in what is called the House of Dance in Sweden, which is a 1950s complexion. It's a very rigid structure and has a very to be a house of dance that is sort of compiled of very much movement and very much sort of energy. It's a very stiff environment, and we wanted to make this come alive somewhere. So we made this huge sculpture, which is also fueled with air, in the sense that it has two very big fans who's feeding it air in different sections. So this blows up and it comes down again, and there's a live play. Everything is controlled via like a DMX dimmer. This is just technique. This is about what it looks like, and right. As you probably can't tell from these images, in my curatorial work, I also like to play a lot with this kind of dramatic or theatrical effects, such as light and sound. So we had a pretty vivid soundtrack compiled of Swedish sound artists to accompany this, and we also blow out huge amounts of smoke and try to use the lights as vividly as possible. But this is a documentation shot, so I didn't bring that in here. Right, Poste Restante. Wow, we've got 40 seconds. I'll try to be brief. Ale, okay. Well, Poste Restante is the artistic relationship and collaboration between me and the set designer named Hilda Lamberg and the dramaturg called Stefan Åkesson. We make big interactive performance pieces in where we make up very idealistic, somewhat unsuspected institutions that we run and we invite visitors to take part in. The work usually stems from inner conflicts, things that we experience very painful or even shameful, something that we're pretty reluctant to talk about. And for this we usually employ, up to our biggest work, contains 17 performers. Our performers are usually not artists, they're usually not actors, they're usually people who work in healthcare, in daycare, schools, people who are used to dealing with giving attention to other people rather than to focus on your own stuff. I would like to show you some images from a work we did in 2010, which we are still touring. We have, since we started 2007, 8, we've done 6 original pieces and toured over Europe, and is about to go over to Canada next year. Anyway, the piece I want to show you some images and slides from is called Chopin's Heart. It's a temporary retreat for melancholics, people who suffer from melancholia. Is invited to take part in these activities, to visit this institution, since melancholia is not a curable disease, it's a permanent state that we all carry. We like to think that we can't cure it, but we can do something to ease the suffering of the suffering, sort of, if you get what I mean. Anyway, it was originally commissioned by a big theater in Warsaw called the Teatr Dramatyczny. I would like to say that we do not work with theater spaces in that sense, so we never use a stage. There's no this division that we have now, that there's an auditorium and then there's a stage. That we create full-scale institutions where you come as a visitor. And well, this was originally produced for a festival called whatever, and we later then toured it to Stockholm. I would like to talk a bit later, far later, maybe in 2 or 3, 4 hours, about what it's like to try to move a very site and situation specific piece to a new country, or how to build into the original conception and the concept of the piece. But that's later. Let's look at some images. Here are some writing boards. Here's the sleeping saal. Well, visitors we invited one by one, so each ticket meant an individual appointment at Chopin's Heart, where you were greeted in the reception, you were let in, and you were each given one spot, and you would have the complete attention of one of our performers. We see here some images from the sleeping saal. This was a performance that kept open for 14 hours. It was a pretty long performance. And people could stay ranging from 2 to this 8 hours. They could also spend the night there. We offered different kinds of activities, whereas this is a piano room, where you could, by the aid of one of our performers, learn and master how to play a piece of Chopin's music in 10 minutes. For those of you who always wish to be the great genius, but have the sneaking suspicion that this never really actually happened, you could perform your own role as the genius for just a couple of minutes. There's another activity called a trip to Mallorca, which is a simulated dream date, where you along with a performer could go on a date where you watch the sun set over the Mediterranean Sea, on slides of course, since we were in Warsaw, and have some sangria, and after that have a slow dance. But after that it was time to say goodbye. Well, we moved it, as I said, to Stockholm, where we found where we used a bit of a smaller space. This was in Warsaw. We built the set design comprised of 1,200 square meters, and Stockholm it was reduced to about 200 square meters. This is the main hall at Chopin's Heart in Stockholm, where you were let in first, where you can lay puzzles, you can have some soup, you can try to choose between the activities that you would like to commence. In here was the sleeping saal, and this woman over here is Danuta. She's 68 years old. She's from Poland, from Warsaw, Poland, and she been working in a bank all her life, and she spoke her first words of English with us. Actually, that was a pretty fantastic encounter for us. She's one of our performers. Here's a park, as you can see. It's of course a very simulated park. It's to allow you to have a nice and quiet walk in the park, although indoors, so you wouldn't have to leave the room. Sweden is a very cold country, as you might know. I'm going to end with this image. This is people do whatever they can to cure melancholia. Me, myself, I'm very interested and very fond of animals. So I really like to watch animal films and documentaries. And this is also something that we offered our visitors to watch, a pretty long documentary about killer whales, who is one of the most fascinating animals on the planet. Well, thank you very much. Bye-bye.